last week. He seems to be doing okay. I've spoken to Kayla Bumpus. I know she's working on getting him out. I saw that she filed bond motions for him. So, I'm expecting him to get out. I don't see any reason to hold him in there.
I see. There's no reason. I see that you filed emergency bond. Talk about that bond motion that you filed.
I didn't file that. Kayla Bumpus is representing him.
Oh, you didn't file that.
No, Kayla Bumpus is representing him on his jail charges. So she's working on getting him out.
I want to ask you a question, Doug. How difference between mainstream? What's the difference between mainstream media and the YouTube media? And how was the YouTube media advantage to you?
I think that most of the time, not across the board, but most of the time, because the mainstream media, this isn't like, I don't want to say the sole, but the major focus of their attention. They're doing a million other things that, for the most part, the mainstream media doesn't know the case in the level of detail that the folks on like YouTube that really just cover like true crime stuff, y'all, and trials, y'all tend to know the details more than the mainstream media. There's some exceptions like the AJC that's there every day. They have a pretty good handle on it. Some of the reporters like Michael Seiden have a pretty good handle on it. But the YouTube folks that really watch it every day, you guys know all the ins and outs, all the players, the witnesses, the defendants, the state's position. So y'all have more facts of the details of the case.
I'd like to give a special shout out to Thugger Daly, and tell me how big of a part he played in your trial. And
yeah, Thugger Daly was huge for a number of reasons. He did honestly, like if you couldn't watch a stream, like most people are working, right? So, and you wanted to keep track of the trial, his tweets were almost always like real-time updates of what's going on in the trial. So he allowed the public to follow the trial on at least an hour-by-hour basis and know what's going on. And then he had amazing insights for the public on the details of all the different motions, and he could explain what it meant. For someone with no legal background, he really knew the law really well. He clearly was well sourced amongst, attorneys and players. So he was able to give background information. And that's just on the public side. Then you got to think of the other direction. He fed me information that I found to be useful because, I don't have a background in rap music. That's not what I listen to for the most part. So he was able to provide me with a lot of information that was really useful. So it was a two-way flow of information with Thugger Daly. I really appreciate him.
And let me ask you a question. Outside of the prosecution, are you friends with DA Love and Hilton? Do y'all have a relationship, like a candor relationship?
I wouldn't say that I have much of a relationship at all with Adrian Love. I think that I have a good professional relationship with the other prosecutors involved in the case. We get along well in the courtroom. I don't see him outside the courtroom. But I think we have a good working professional relationship with all the others in there. This is the first case I've worked with most of them on. I've had some small interactions with Adam Abate in the past, and they've always been very professional and good relationships. So I have a good working relationship, but I don't have any kind of a personal relationship with them.
Doug, talk to me about the camaraderie between the defendants out behind the scenes.
The defendants or defense attorneys or all of us?
the defendants outside of what we see because we don't see them interacting with each other in the
Yeah.
courtroom as much. But
Yeah.
behind the scenes, were they serious or out or behind the scenes they was friends and they said hello before the cameras came on?
Yeah, I think the defendants, for the most part, you don't really see it when the cameras are rolling, but or turned on. But when we're getting settled in there and court's about to begin, or we've got a break and the cameras aren't off, or it's kind of toward the end of the day, or for example, when court was in basically recess for like a week and the plea negotiations are going on. So all of us are just sitting around the courtroom and the camera isn't running. We got nothing going on other than the plea negotiations. Then yeah, all the defendants get along pretty well. There's a lot of talk and about all kinds of stuff going on. Sports, music, whatever, people's lives. So they have for the most part, I think most of the defendants have a good relationship with each other, and pretty casual, and the situation in that courtroom is very tense and it's very high stakes. So if there was an opportunity to relax and maybe laugh a little bit, we tried to do that too. By the way, the same goes for most of the deputies in there, for the most part. Not all of them, but most of them. It was a very friendly relationship between the defendants and the deputies.
I love the attorneys. I love how y'all came together. Talk about how was it dealing with the discovery for different people and how y'all had to sit there and talk and talk and talk because the discovery is a conflict of interest. How did y'all get through those landmines?
Each of us independently reviewed the discovery, right? And so you had, for example, Max Sharp probably knew the discovery better than anybody. He probably, I would bet that as any individual, he probably spent more time reviewing all that discovery because one of the reasons was that, of course, his client was involved in a lot more allegations, especially with two, charges that involved death. He was heavily involved in that. But Max Sharp knew the discovery really well and could retain it. And his command of the discovery was just amazing to me. I have to write everything down and look at my notes. And Max had it all in his head. Brian Steele had a whole team that just went through every single bit of discovery and interviewed every single witness. And so because he had those kind of resources that the rest of us didn't have, he really could look at everything. And he shared, we had an agreement to share information that we generated. So there was the sharing of information, but among all the defense lawyers. But for example, I'd say if we were looking for expertise in an area, like when things came up with Mr. Huey, then I would go to Mr. Matthews because I know Mr. Matthews knows that Huey material probably better than anyone. Or if something comes up with Mr. Nichols, then I could go to Miss Westmoreland or Mr. Harvey because I knew they knew it the best. So all of us were basically, and this isn't something that we decided upon in advance. This is just what happened. And the reality is that each of us became experts in what our clients basically were accused of being involved in, and then had a general knowledge of everything else. With the exception, I think, of that whole team Brian put together, who really knew a lot of the discovery, even stuff that didn't directly relate to Jeffrey Williams.
Discuss how this case has impacted your career, impacted the way you see law, impact the way you see people, impact the way you see rap.
That's a really good question. I think you're the first one that's asked me that, and I appreciate that question. that question, this case has had a tremendous, well, I don't know how it's impacted my career yet because it just ended, but I think it's fair to say I've got a lot of people contacting me now who wouldn't have contacted me earlier because obviously, as you've heard, I'm relatively new to criminal law. I think what it has done is it has confirmed my love of criminal defense, my love of protecting people's rights and defending folks, making sure the state puts forth all that they have to do and holding their feet to the fire. So it's really, from a career thing, really cemented my decision to focus more on criminal law and take a switch to that. And then as far as rap music and the rap industry, I did not, before this case, I did not realize how much rap music and rap lyrics were used against people that rap that stuff. I didn't realize the tremendous use of lyrics against artists in criminal cases. And especially because that's kind of been, I guess, maybe more than any other defense attorney. I don't know. But I think I've been the most vocal, perhaps, about the use of lyrics against people. And so it's really opened my eyes to that and kind of turned me into it's become a main cause of mine. And that's because of this case.
Ever since this case, you had me shepherdizing cases of, you had me shepherdizing cases of some of this stuff. Because, I was sending you some things really inspired me to look into law a great deal. And you epitomizes what attorneys should be to their clients. And I want you to speak about the relationship, the love, the fatherly advice, the how you felt about Diamante Kendricks, because I see that hug that you gave him. That wasn't an ordinary hug, Doug. That hug was father, son. It wasn't no we won or I made some money. That hug was genuine. Speak about that hug, and if you could say some of the things he said to you in that hug, I appreciate it.
Well, it's a little hard for me to discuss. I think that as a defense attorney, you're probably not supposed to develop those kinds of personal relationships and bonds with your clients. It's supposed to remain professional. But you can't sit next to someone like Diamante for 2 years almost every weekday for 8 or 10 hours or more and not begin to think of him as family. And he is family. I was just talking to his mom, Tasha, this morning. And I talk to Tasha almost every day right now. And she's family and Diamante is family. So that verdict, it meant so much to me, not for my career, but I don't want to see him in jail. I don't want to see him in prison. I want to see him out. I want to see him living his life. I want to see him enjoying his family, getting to see his daughter. And so it was very emotional for me. And I do think of him like a son or a brother. I try to dispense advice if he asks. I don't generally volunteer it. Sometimes I do. And I think we've both taught each other a lot. And he will always, always be part of my family. Anyway, that's not going to change. And I'm not a touchy person. I kind of like my space. But when we sat down after that verdict was read, and after the verdict for Stillwell was read, I think it was after Shannon's verdict was read that it really hit me that we'd gotten that not guilty. And I think it probably hit Diamante then. And yeah, we had a long embrace, and it was one of the best moments of my life. I mean, it's right up there. I felt like I was getting a chance to see a man who I love and care for get his life back.
I just want to say you work with such an awesome team. The lawyers that I've seen that you work with is the epitomize strength. The team player epitomizes what you did. When I was looking at the trial and you told the juries, go back and look at the video, he didn't walk out of there. And he didn't get into no infinity. Look at it 1,000 times. And how shocked was you that one of the questions was, after you told him look at it 1,000 times, how shocked was you that they asked to see that video?
You know, I'm glad. You know, I think in many cases, perhaps the defense is concerned about the evidence. And one of the things Brian Steele taught me was don't run away from the evidence. You know, embrace the evidence, grab the evidence. And here, I thought 1,000%. I didn't want to hide the evidence. I don't want to confuse the jury. I wanted to say to the jury, look at it. Look at what the state is showing you. And you can see it. I'm not afraid. Look at it. So when they came back and wanted to look at it, I was thrilled because I thought, okay, here's what I took from that at the time. They want to make sure that he pulled out in a Pontiac because they were very specific as to what they wanted to see. They wanted to see him getting into the vehicle. That's what they specifically asked for. And they wanted to see the front of the barbershop with that drive-by. So I knew what they were doing. Well, I thought I knew. I hoped I knew, which was they were comparing those cars to make sure the car he got into at the gas station was not the car that was involved in the drive-by. So I was very happy that's how I interpreted it. Turns out I think I may have been wrong having talked to the jury. They weren't even sure that was an Infiniti that did the drive-by. They weren't convinced it was an Infiniti. Now me, I loved it being an Infiniti because Diamante wasn't in an Infiniti. So the state wanted to bring on a Infiniti expert to swear it was an Infiniti. And God bless you, state. God bless you, prosecutors, for bringing on that expert to say it was an Infiniti. Because the last thing I wanted to hear was it was a Pontiac. Because I know it wasn't a Pontiac, but yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to keep you too long. Tick. His lawyer at the time. Do you had one of the prosecutors that prosecuted the YSL charges, and then you had him as a defense team? Was that a huge win for you guys? With Mr.
I think that was Suri Chata Jimenez. Is that right? Was he the one that would previously he previously prosecuted?
Prosecutor for one of the.
Yeah. So that can be an issue, and I think this was before I was really involved in the case. This was toward the very beginning when Suri Chata Jimenez had been hired. The state brought up that issue of a potential conflict there. And I believe, and again, I was not there at that hearing on that, but I'm given that Suri Chata Jimenez continued to represent, I believe, Mr. Dorsey during the case, then the judge found that was not a conflict. Yeah. And that makes sense to me. I think that was a good ruling from Judge Glanville. So I accept the judge's ruling on that. And Suri Chata Jimenez didn't feel it was a conflict. The judge didn't feel it was a conflict. So I'm going to defer to them on that.
Now, here's a question I had to ask you. I know you and YAK GOTTI has got a not guilty verdict. Now, what's your thoughts on Young Thug saying that he's have mixed feelings about the plea agreement now that the outcome has came, and he said he put in motion back now actually that he signed up for, which is back to Fulton County and came forced on his drawback.
Your question broke up a little bit at the end, so I don't think I
You
heard. Can
heard
you
me?
repeat that last part?
I said, what's your thoughts on Young Thug's drawback to the his plea agreement now that he's saying to Mr. Adams that he went off probation?
First of all, and I hope this is answering your question. First of all, I think that decision by Jeffrey Williams, by Young Thug, to take that plea agreement, that is something that I will, when anyone takes a plea, I am never, ever going to second guess it. Because in my mind, nobody's in that person's shoes but that individual. That is a very personal decision. And he he made that for whatever reason he did. And as I guess I saw that interview, and maybe he has some second thoughts about having taken it now, which I understand now that we got these not guilties. But you also have to appreciate a few things. One is this trial wrapped up 3 or 4 weeks after they pled out, right? But if they'd have still been in the case, we'd have been in here with the state another few months. And then Brian Steele would have put on his case, which would have been another, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks of him putting on his case. So Jeffrey Williams would have been locked up in Cobb County probably into next March or April if he'd have stayed in the case. So he did cut that short. And the other thing is, I have no doubt that at some point in time, he'll talk to his lawyers and they'll make some move to try to, maybe cut that probation a little short. So I don't know, again, I'm not his attorney and I don't want to speak for his attorneys, but I'd be a little bit surprised if he ended up serving that full term of his probation, especially given the outcome in this case. But I understand him
Doug,
having
I was
second thoughts.
looking at you. I thought you was my bookie. Doug,
Do I
I
look
thought
like
we
your
was going to be
bookie?
here to Super Bowl. Your words. Yeah, I said your words. We was going to be here to Super Bowl. So I'm like, okay, my bookie said put all the money on. But Doug said we going to Super Bowl, baby. We going to Super Bowl. You said, Your
Hey,
Honor,
we
we're
would
going
have
to be here to Super Bowl.
we would have still been in here Super Bowl and next year if these guys hadn't have pled out when they did a month ago. And if Judge Glanville wouldn't have been replaced with Judge Whitaker, and Judge Whitaker basically pressuring the state to cut back on their number of witnesses, we'd have probably been here till Super Bowl of 26 at least. So I think when circumstances change, things change on the ground, right? So that's what happened.
Yep. And last but not least, Judge, everybody says she was God sent. And do you think this decision will somehow, if she come around for re-election, you think she could become chief judge or should be chief judge?
Well, it's interesting. The chief judge position in Georgia, that's more of an administrative position. And the judges, they decide amongst themselves who will be the chief judge in a kind of a rotation. And it tends to be more of a seniority thing, like you do your time and then eventually you get to be chief judge. But it's more of an administrative thing than a higher position than the other judges. So I don't think I think that, me personally, I think Judge Whitaker, given that she's clearly very much a legal scholar and that she has a great deal of experience doing appeals back when she was not a judge, before she was a judge, I think she should be on the Court of Appeals or the Georgia Supreme Court one day. I mean, she's a great trial judge. Don't get me wrong. I would love to keep her as a trial judge in Fulton County. But I think not just from this case, but given her experience and the quality of her managing trials and the quality of her rulings from the bench, I really think she should be on the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court of Georgia.
Doug, I just want to tell you I appreciate you for taking the time out to speak to me. And
Thank you.
you inspire me. I let the people in Jacksonville know. I'll be on the
Yeah,
Promise radio station on Saturdays. You probably heard of the Promise radio. I'm on the Promise radio station on Saturdays. I'm actually in the Promise radio station building. I actually own two offices. Yeah, I've been in years. And I'm in the fix their credit. I help people with business. And I just look at things from afar, from a prison, Doug, and YouTube is just not my only source. It was just a voice for me to have for people that need it. And
that's great. I love that.
I just
That's
want
really great. You keep
to
doing what you're
respect you
doing.
all, Harvey, Miss Westmoreland, uh, Mr. Adams, um, father and son, and everything. I just want to thank all the YouTubers from Seti Nash to Nick Stroh to Dennis Byron to infamous Sylvia to Cat Knott Williams to the lead attorney to Doug and Daly, everybody that played a part because they seen ethical lawyers that was fighting for young brothers that they felt that shouldn't be in this position. And I just thank you, Doug. And if there's anything that I could do for you, any platform, or I would love to donate to a nonprofit organization of your choice. If you can email me a nonprofit organization of your
Okay.
choice.
Thank you very, very
You
much.
have a YouTuber that you felt that you know that you think that put so much work in, give me, and I will write a donate to their channel. Send them $100 super chat or something of your choice. So you can send me that through how we be talking, and I appreciate you, Doug. And tell everybody keep his head up. If I can change, I know he can change. You have a great day, Doug, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Continue on being the man that you are, and you
Thank
have
you.
a beautiful family. And I could tell, and tell your wife she got it. She very have kids. You are a epitome of a dad. You have a great day.
You're very nice. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me on. And I'm glad we finally got to